The war in Ukraine, where there is immense concern over what could happen in the U.S. presidential election. While Vice President Harris has pledged continued support to the country, former President Trump has praised Putin's decision to invade Ukraine, calling it both genius and savvy. His words. Trump now says if elected, he would end the war, which could mean cutting off U.S. military supplies and allowing Russia to stay on Ukrainian territory. Holly Williams has just returned from yet another trip to Ukraine and filed this report.
From F-16s to Patriot missiles and artillery systems, the US has supplied Ukraine with over $60 billion in military assistance since Russia invaded in 2022. We met up with Ukraine's 80th Air Assault Brigade using birch forest for cover close to the Russian border.
It's a heavy machine gun from United States.
Is it a Browning? Is
yeah,
that
it's
right?
Browning M2, 50 cal.
Okay.
These are American-supplied Stryker fighting vehicles, 18 tons of armour-plated steel. The Ukrainians used them to launch an incursion into Russia in August, aimed at weakening Moscow's attacks in Ukraine. By some estimates, Russia's gaining ground faster now than at any point since the early months of the war, and now controls around 20% of Ukraine.
Я був водієм вантажівки, трак-драйвер.
Viktor Zakharov is a truck driver turned striker driver who told us he's deeply grateful to Americans for the strikers and other aid.
Have you seen them save Ukrainian lives?
Бачив.
Seen it, heard it, and felt it, he told us. American weapons have helped hold the Russians back. But the US was supporting Ukraine long before this war. In 2014, when Ukrainians led a revolution against their pro-Russian government, Senator John McCain was in Kyiv.
People of Ukraine, this is your moment.
John McCain's street in Ukraine's capital was named in the late senator's honour. But with the US presidential election too close to call, the moods turned gloomy and anxious. Helena's husband is serving in the military and told us Ukrainians will hold on. She hopes Americans won't abandon them.
Are you worried that Donald Trump could cut off the supply of weapons to Ukraine?
Yes, she told us. For us, it's a matter of survival.
And Holly Williams joins us now at the table. Holly, it's so great to have you here in studio.
Thank you for having me.
Out of the weather and the war zone. So if Donald Trump wins, the concern is that he will let Russia keep the territory it's gaining, and it's gaining a lot. Why? Why is it gaining right now?
Yeah, really interesting question. So if you remember at the start of the invasion, the Ukrainians kind of pulled off the extraordinary. You know, they pushed the Russians back from around Kyiv, and the Russians suffered this string of embarrassing failures. But what we're hearing now from the Ukrainians is that the Russians are learning. So one example of that is glide bombs. These are old Soviet-era munitions. They're retrofitted with wings and GPS, and the Russians are using them to terrorize Ukrainians. Then also you've got demographics. So by some counts, more than 100,000 Russians have died in Ukraine, but they just keep on drafting more, including in prisons and from desperately poor places. And they have more than 3 times the population of Ukraine. Wow. Now, the Ukrainians can't change any of that, but it's why they keep coming back to the US and other Western countries and asking for more weapons. And it's why they're so worried about this election.
This is so fascinating. Your reporting out of there has been terrific, and it continues. Holly Williams, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. You can watch more of Holly's reporting on Ukraine this Sunday on 60 Minutes here on CBS and streaming, of course, on Paramount+.